And we return to the one timeline which is tangentially connected to a few of our other story beats, but yet has not been directly connected beyond name-dropping some other characters and directly meeting Governor Aisha. The failure. I spent a lot of time sitting around, watching, waiting. Came with the job, I guess. Actually, thinking about it, I also do it a lot when not on the job. I mean, right now I'm definitely doing it for my job. But, even off the job, I tend to just sit down and look out into the world aimlessly. I needed a better hobby. People watching had to be the bottom of the barrel. Even if it was useful. I turned off the music while I was listening to it in my headphones. Ever since my conversation with Secretary Gani, I couldn't really listen to Talay anymore. I couldn't put my finger on why. I mean, it's not like anything changed about me. I should still like it. But now I felt, self-conscious about listening to it? I don't know why I cared. I certainly didn't care about Secretary Gani's opinion. But nonetheless, I felt self-conscious. So I turned it off. Silence would suit me just fine. Without the music, my mind wandered to thoughts on my job to fill the void. I thought back to my conversation with Miss Aisha. A part of me felt guilty for questioning her like that. But a part of me, a traitorous part of me, was still annoyed at her. I believed her when she said that she didn't kill that man. Thinking about it, she was probably right in that she was too busy to have the time to go out and do it. And more to the point, she's trusted me with so many of these kills. This is the extra cock robin killing. There's no reason why she wouldn't have me deal with it. The only explanation would be if she didn't plan on killing him. But in that case, where'd she get the bell? She had nothing to do with that kill. No, what annoyed me was why she wasn't looking into things further. I'd always been told that only 3 people knew the truth about the cock robin killings. And if I remembered correctly, I'm pretty sure the third party wasn't anywhere near the crime scene at the time of the kill. Oh? Who's the third party? If somebody knew our secret, that should be huge cause for alarm. And Aisha was just pretending like nothing happened? The only way I could square that away, in my mind, with Aisha's personality was if she knew who the real killer was. Had Aisha lied to me about who knew about the Cock Robin murders? Why? Did she not trust me enough? Had I ever been disloyal? I wouldn't think Aisha had a 4th member. I wouldn't know what for. Everything required for the murders was already handled. I didn't know of anybody close enough to her that she'd let them in for the sake of things. But if the Bell Killer was truly a mystery to Aisha, she'd be furiously searching for the true culprit, paranoid that the operation had been leaked somehow. The fact that she wasn't told me all I needed to know. Well then, that's fine. It just told me I needed to do more to win her trust. If she couldn't trust me with that information, it means I haven't earned it. Everything in life must be earned. Anyways, the topic of complaining about Miss Aisha, she really could have done to get me more information on Locke. Her file was laughably sparse. A lesser assassin wouldn't be able to do anything with such little information. They demand more info. That's why I was top rate. I wasn't fussy like that. If there's not enough to go on, I'd do my part. I spent some time digging as much as I could find on Locke. Unfortunately, that was trickier than expected. Maybe I had been too harsh on Miss Aisha. After all, it's not like I was able to do much better. Locke was a mysterious character. He played things close to the chest. He hadn't been in town for long, though I was a little unclear of the timeline. Wasn't able to locate where he lived. I didn't know what his official job was. I didn't even know his last name. That wasn't unintentional. I was good at my job. If I was struggling to find information, that meant it was being hidden. Was Locke preemptively hiding from an assassin? That was, frankly, a ludicrous explanation. Who then was he hiding from? Considering he seemingly arrived in Panthea not long ago, I doubted it was a force like the Duats. He theoretically wouldn't have done anything to anger them. Combined with all the other information I had, my best guess was that his trip to Panthea was something of an escape hatch. He probably conned the wrong people in some other city and fled over here to try and lie low until the heat died down. Whether he was being chased by the cops or some outside crime organization was unknown and irrelevant. The point was, his pursuers had failed to do their job, so now I had to do mine. Locke clearly had gotten comfortable in his new city. He had settled in and moved his eyes to a new target to scam. Only problem was, somehow, that was going to interfere with Miss Aisha's plans. Goes to show, you can only live a life of crime for so long before you step on a bigger fish's toes. As limited as my recon ended up being, I was able to get the info that I needed. Nahoi's nest was definitely not my scene, but it was good for getting information. People talked when they were drunk. I heard a lot of stories about Locke. I had a decent read on who this guy was. Any doubts I had about this target were dispelled. The only information I really needed to know, with an assignment this broad, was where I could find him. This didn't need to be a cock-robin kill. Since Locke probably had a lot of enemies and lived a less than scrupulous life, it'd be an open-ended investigation that cops would be content to let fall to the wayside. The poem was also starting to run low, so I should save my verses. There probably needed to be at least one more decoy, or else people would grow suspicious, so the number of actual kills it could be used for was drastically reduced. Locke would have to do with an unceremonious end. Fitting, I thought. Though that sort of thinking was still a bit too emotionally driven for this line of work. Right now, Locke was rattling around in his coffin. I had no idea what he was doing. Frankly, I didn't care. All I knew is that he was doing his regular routine of a nightly visit at Nahoi's nest. Hopefully, he enjoyed himself. Because the moment he popped out of that hidey hole, it'd be curtains for him. I had been staking out Nahoi's nest for several nights now. One way or another, I must have kept missing him. Maybe he was coming less frequently. Maybe my timing was off. Whatever the case may be, tonight I hit the jackpot. I had a clear shot of Locke entering the venue earlier. It was from a distance, but with his getup, there was no mistaking him. I could have done it right then. Unfortunately, right as he was entering the front restaurant, an older couple who seemingly were attending the actual restaurant legitimately for a meal happened to be on their way out of the venue. Further down the street, a large group of drunken college students were on a bar crawl. There's also businessmen making their way back to their apartment close by. All in all, it was still too early in the night. There were plenty of witnesses. It would probably have still worked out if I had made my move then, but there was no need to rush things like that. Nahoi's nest had one entrance and one exit. It's not like Locke was going to stay the night or anything. Eventually he'd leave the casino, probably after a successful night of swindling drunks out of their money. Given his schedule, he'd likely be right in the dead of the night. Nobody around then. And I'd just finish him off then. For now, I was just leaning back and waiting for the right time to strike. My current arrangement wasn't what one would call comfortable. I always prioritized function over comfort. This was a very functional spot. Currently, I was lounging on a fire escape on the apartment building directly across the street from Nahoi's nest. The section of the fire escape I lounged on was right next to an abandoned apartment. Finding abandoned apartments isn't as hard as people make it out to be. You just need to be patient and discreet. From my current position, I had a nice aerial advantage over my shooting range. It would be hard to directly spot me from this position. And I had many exit paths. With all that said, I was still a little more exposed than I was comfortable with. But sometimes a hit required putting yourself out there a bit. As for equipment, I planned on this sniper rifle doing most of the heavy lifting. It was properly silenced, properly calibrated, and I was properly trained. If I saw Locke, it'd take seconds to pull this thing out and put a bullet in his head. And just as a backup, I also had a silenced pistol in my holster. The sniper rifle was a little unwieldy, so it's always good to have backups. For an assassin, this setup was pretty solid. For a person, it was far from ideal. The metal was not comfortable, and the wind up here was starting to make me feel a little bit chilly. I was better at ignoring it when I had the music on. Now that I was in my thoughts, however, they started to wander to how physically uncomfortable I had become. The answer? Time to turn back on some music. I shouldn't let my self-consciousness drive me away from listening to Tale's music. That was dumb. Honestly. Or, hey, why not try listening to a new artist? There was a lot of music out there, after all. However, right as I reached my phone, my heart dropped. I began to receive a call. Oh. That in itself wasn't bad. What was worrying about this call was the fact that it came from an unknown number. Someone not on my phone's contact list. This shouldn't be possible. I use this phone for work. I was extremely cautious with who got this number. Everybody who knew it was in my contact list. So for somebody not on that contact list to be calling, I hesitated. Should I even pick it up? I mean, I was in the middle of a job. I shouldn't be distracted. More to the point, if I answered this phone with my voice, that might give, well, something away. I had a policy to never enter a battle I didn't know I could win. It might be overdramatic to call a single phone call a battle, but I regarded any call made on this phone as such. If they needed to get in touch with me, they'd leave a voicemail or send a text like a normal person. From that, I could judge the situation better. Unless... or the call had come from somebody who had this contact number. I mean, if they were calling this phone, that tracks, right? If they were calling from an unusual phone, well, that implies the situation might be grave or dire. What if Miss Asia was currently under attack or something? Answering the phone might be vitally important. Quickly, I weighed the risks of picking up the phone against the risks of just ignoring the call and waiting for a voicemail. I decided the bigger risk was not answering the call. Hesitantly, I put the phone up to my ear, and I clicked the answer button. I waited. Sure as hell wasn't going to make the first word. What was I dealing with? I can hear you breathing, Devon. Oh, hi, Odin. Odin? But when I heard that familiar voice, I instantly began to clench up. What? Weren't you taught to answer first when receiving a call? For shame. Odin. Ah, there's that familiar voice. Why are you calling? Oh, do I need an excuse to talk to my son? Who says I have a particular reason? So you still consider me your son? Well, but of course. Did I not make that clear? We, left on kind of ambiguous grounds. Precisely. If I were to fully sever our bond, I trust that you'd be fully aware. Oh. Then if I am your son, it's been a pretty long time since you talked to me. Untrue. Simply untrue. Or did you forget our conversation at the gala? My heart skipped a beat. I don't. We didn't. I wasn't at the gala. Oh, sure you were. I mean, you were in that dreary getup. But I can recognize your telltale plotting in any context. A part of me wasn't even surprised. Odin was many things, but anything less than supremely insightful was not one of them. Still back then, to notice me, I gulped. You know, normally I wouldn't have a day spent acting as a lonely waiter. Fortunately, you were wearing that mask, so I gave it a pass for the night. Besides, it seemed as though you were putting yourself to good use. Even still, you never spoke to me. You didn't notice? You always were slow on the uptick. I noticed you eavesdropping, so I made sure to speak to both you and Art. Oh. You know, between the two of you, I had so hoped that at least one of you would have seen through my words. But then again, I always did push you to unreasonable heights. He did hint way back, I think it was in Laverna's chapter, about there being another son. And I remember questioning this at the time, but I didn't expect this outcome. I didn't know what to say to that. Instead, my mind tried to go back to what Odin was talking about with Art on that night. I couldn't recall accurately enough. Something about why Odin didn't just retire. Beyond that, it was a blur. Then again, if Art couldn't solve one of Odin's riddles, I surely had no chance. At any rate, you are right on at least one mark, which is that we haven't had a proper conversation in quite some time. An interesting point about that is Odin mentioned the way I would talk about Odin's agenda, and Odin mentioned the Tremurti. So then let's talk, Devon. How are you enjoying your new job? It's good. It's fulfilling. Being good at something. Splendid. You did have quite a talent for murder, didn't you? Won that silly award. Best in death. Only we had learned of it sooner. Perhaps we could have cultivated that talent instead of wasting so much time. I know a friend who'd be perfect at that sort of training. I was speechless. Speaking with Odin was usually an exhausting experience, but rare did he throw out so many high-velocity punches this quickly. I don't know what you're talking about. Playing coy? What did I always say about keeping secrets? I could try, but I'd never be as good at hiding things as you'd be at seeing through things. So you do remember at least some of my lessons. That's nice to know. As you said, trying to hide from me is a waste of breath, Devon. That cock-robin thing? It's really silly. Did Odin do the extra killing in the first story of the game? Still, you got a job working for the governor, so I can't be so derisive. Honestly, it's rather impressive. How do you know all about that? You just admitted it for me, you dolt. Damn it. Which is why saying anything to Odin was a mistake. No matter what you said, he'd always find a way to twist it around, to use it against you. Stupid Devon. Before now, it was mostly a suspicion of mine. Of course, my suspicions are often correct. Mark of the Ruler is a killer intuition. It's that killer intuition that kept you alive in the army, I bet. But it occasionally misfires, so it's always nice to get confirmation. But before that, your hunch. How did you get to that? No. More importantly than that, how did you get this number? Those are better questions. Let's see. Well, as I said, I saw you at the gala. Later that night, dear Athen was the victim of a rather awful murder. Didn't take much to put the pieces together. In truth, since we had last spoke, I had essentially given up on you. For years you tried my patience, but it appeared that you had well and truly given up on ever becoming worthy of the royal blood that flows in your vein. Oh, that's right, we had the... Oh... We had the brief picture of... Oh... Easy, you coy... Oh... We had the bet about whether Devon's dad was still in the picture. Well, here is Devon's dad. There's that answer. You had well and truly given up on ever becoming worthy of the royal blood that flows in your veins. Had you died in a ditch a month later, I wouldn't have attended your funeral. But seeing you in action had me curious. I always knew you had potential, and I'm rarely wrong about those sorts of hunches. I have a very special birdie who is unbelievably talented at gathering information. I tasked my birdie to gather as much information as they could get on you. After some time, they gave me their report, along with this number. So I thought it was worth giving you a call. A birdie? A birdie had found this out. How had I... What did I... Let me guess. Weak as ever, you're now panicking about how you didn't do a good enough job at covering your tracks. Dispel those fears. It took a considerable amount of effort for my birdie to get what they had on you, and little of it was substantive. But it was impossible for my birdie to not uncover your secrets eventually. They can get their hands on pretty much any information in Panthea, the things mere reporters and police officers can't reach. It's one of the secrets of my immortality, you see. I didn't know what to make of all this. It was all too much. I was struggling to keep a grip on the conversation at all. It felt as though at any moment the whole thing would slip completely out of my control. That's what talking with Odin felt like. We never really held any power. Not in where the conversation was going. The best you could do was try and hold on to as much as you could and ride it out. If you were lucky, he'd stop talking before too long. One thing I have to give this game credit for is really building up Odin. Of all the forces the top forces we've met in this city, the three major ones being Governor Aisha, Governor Panthea, Marduk of the Duats, and Odin. I'd argue... Maybe it's because we've had the most interaction with Odin? But Odin, I feel like, is the most mysterious. Odin feels like... by far beyond any sort of normal human position of power. It's like the power Odin seems to hold is like truly mysterious, and like we've definitely built him up as something powerful and dangerous. Like a god, almost. If you're lucky, he'd stop talking before too long. What do you want? I wanted to talk with my son. To tell them they've been doing an excellent job. What? Huh? Must admit, if you had told me a decade or so ago that one of my sons would grow to be an assassin, I would have scoffed at the idea. It isn't exactly a task fitting a ruler. But over the years, I've grown an appreciation for violence. In a sense, the ability to take lives at will is the greatest measure of power there is. And unlike a typical thug, an assassin's methods are elegant as well and well measured. They rely on information, skill, and an iron will, all important traits. Additionally, from what I can tell, you're using your skills to support Governor Aisha. To be honest, I can't say I fully approve of having Panthea led by such a woman. My assessment would rank her as utterly unworthy. However, it appears that her reign is for the best. At the very least, Art seems to want her in charge for a bit longer. Probably for some small-minded reason like tax exemptions or whatever, knowing his priorities. And my biases aside, simply put, supporting the current governmental monarch is an achievement of itself. It's a position of great power. Better than I would have ever dreamed for you. You have done well to get there, Devon. Thank you. Keep things up and who knows? Huh? Like I said, I never officially disinherited you. Probably has been the thorough embarrassment, one even greater than you, if that's possible. And Art. Well, he certainly inherited my ambitions and much of my talent. However, I have been having growing doubts about his place. To rule requires a fire within. And he seems increasingly hollow. As of now, he is still superior. if he keeps up his downward trajectory and you keep your upwards one, well, the future has many twists and turns. Never would have imagined this situation, and yet here we are. Life has so many amusements. At the very least, maintaining your position could be advantageous to the Despa family down the line. So keep up the good work. I'd love to talk more, but I've got to bail the dumber of your brothers out. On the looks of it, I would guess he's being played as we speak. Advantageous to the Despa family. Oh, is this taking place at the same time as, Locke's third story? Locke versus Odin. Odin drops in and schools the fuck out of Locke. Bails out Polly. Polly, who's on the rebound in his own bizarre way. Wow, there's a lot going on here. Is Devon's story going to end up building to the case of turn on Aisha to get back in Dad's good graces? Or side with Aisha and tip the balance of power in that direction? Wow, that's amazing just how that little fact just instantly increased Devon's relevance to the overall plots of Panthea tenfold. Did he seriously think I was still loyal to them? What, was I? It seemed as though Odin was about to hang up, but in an entirely unexpected turn of events, I wanted to keep talking. Wait. Oh? You have more to say? Did you kill Maximilian Collins? The phone was dead quiet. Then, faintly, I heard it. Interesting. Very interesting indeed. So you didn't kill that one, is that right? Now this is quite fascinating to me. Answer the question. Maximilian Collins. He was related to Veronica Collins. It's rare that a woman can capture my respect. Veronica was one of two such women, the other being your late mother. For all the entertainment she has given me, I would much rather not lay waste to her relatives. That seems like an acceptable baseline of respect. You're not saying you wouldn't, though. Or wait, what about your birdie? Is it possible that they killed him? Devon. For as far as you've come, you've never learned how to properly use that thing in your head that barely qualifies as a brain. Think for a moment. Insert Omni-Man meme. Think, Devon! If what I've told you tonight, is there any way that you can ascertain that answer through your own efforts? God damn it, Odin, answer something straight for me. My mind replayed everything that Odin had told me. Not relevant. Relevant. You only looked into me after that night at the gala. That's when you contacted your birdie. Maximilian was killed in line with the Cock Robin murders. But he was killed at the very least around the time when the first murder happened. Neither you nor the birdie would have known about my involvement at that point, and you wouldn't know that the Psalm murder would be happening. Good. Then again, if I had figured you out and subsequently murdered Maximilian, I could have lied about it when I started looking into you. Did you? Well. You tell me. And just like that, Odin hung up on me. You bastard! I felt like throwing up. Vision was literally blurring. I don't know what was happening, but the moment I got off the phone with Odin, a wave of emotions hit me. Maybe I was bottling them up during the conversation in an attempt to get through it. I couldn't say. All I could say was that I was feeling seriously unwell. Which was pretty bad considering that I was in the middle of a job. Why was I freaking out like this? Wasn't rational. We just talked some. He even congratulated me. I felt good about it. But Odin, just hearing his voice, I could feel so many things coming back to me. I was beginning to spiral. I gripped onto the metal handrail in an attempt to stay in the moment. Focus. I was in the real world. Stay lucid. Growing up in the Daysma family was incredibly weird. On the outside, it might seem like a blessed childhood. We lived in a fancy mansion. We went on nice vacations. In theory, I could get anything I liked. I could eat anything I wanted. We had so much money, it was ludicrous. Living there was like making a deal with the devil. Shiny on the surface, horrible on the inside. I don't remember Mom. Art was the only one old enough to have any real memories of her. They were servants, but they were specifically instructed to do their jobs and nothing else. Really, we were just raised by Odin. Odin is a very weird person. One could generously call him an eccentric. I would call him an asshole. Only now, with my years of life, could I see that through. He wanted to impose his view of the world on us. He had a very interesting view of the world. If you wanted anything, you must earn it. Your only value in life was what use you provided. Everything was, in reality, a competition. The winner was right. Never give up power. We were always taught and tested with these lessons. Whenever we asked for something, Odin would be quick to caveat it with a challenge or a price. And if we failed, there would be serious consequences. What was life without stakes? Our property would be destroyed, be banished from the house. Physical punishments were rare, but not unheard of. I remember my fair share of beat Jesus. We learned to play his stupid games from an incredibly young age. That's a warped, fucked up, abusive upbringing. Much as I wanted to hate him, it was hard to. After all, he walked the walk. He consistently provided us opportunities to prove him wrong. And I was never able to. He constantly told us that our purpose was to continue and grow the Daysma family. It's like being raised as an employee of Steve Jobs. Who was awful to the people who worked under him. Let's be real. Everything we did reflected on the Daysma name, so improper behavior was discouraged. Failure was unacceptable. Art had always thrived in this environment. He could devote himself to Odin's studies with a single mind. He'd spend hours training himself to succeed in school, to pass a test, to solve a type of puzzle Odin threw at him. If he was given a chance to prove himself to Odin, he took it. He always succeeded. Well, not always, but often enough that he never really saw the true darkness of Odin's parenting style. When I had heard Art was becoming Olimpo's CEO, it didn't surprise me for a moment. I always resented him for raising the bar to an impossible level. For a long time, I blamed him far more than Odin. A result of Odin's warped, fucked up upbringing. Parenting. Polly, on the other hand, had his fair share of issues. He was horrid at studying. Couldn't stick to anything. He also always cared the least about Odin's approval, his challenges about Odin in general. Those two would get in a number of shouting fights, and Polly would be punished pretty severely at times. But he also wasn't the worst of us. Because despite it all, fundamentally, Polly was talented. Might not have seen it himself, but Odin certainly did. Came to natural intellect, Polly probably even surpassed Art. Wow, this is unexpected. Might not have behaved as elegantly as Art, but he had natural charisma around. That is true, we have seen that. Plus, we've seen how easily he can bond with the rank and file, the hourly associates of Olimpo, the people who matter the most to the day-to-day operation, who you should be supporting. People like Polly. And honestly, I can believe that Polly put aside the alcohol, the gambling, whatnot. Could honestly be a really smart dude. They wanted to be his friend. And perhaps more than anything, Polly was always passionate and driven. A part of Odin hated Polly's insolence, for he was constantly defying him. I suspect that a part of him also respected the gall of it all. But then there was me. Middle child. Most absolute failure. I tried, I really did, to succeed. To be the son that Odin wanted. But I just couldn't do it. My best wasn't enough. I was just lesser. I wasn't smart. I wasn't clever. I wasn't disciplined. I wasn't elegant. No part of me showed the potential to be a leader. I could never apply myself like art to show his level of grace. I never had a natural talent like Polly. Couldn't make people like me like he could. I kept trying to live up to Odin's expectations. And Odin kept trying to make me better by putting me through his lessons. I got the worst of it. Some of the things he put me through to try and motivate me wasn't really that bad on an objective level. I was probably just being a baby about it at the time. Regardless, at a certain point, my ineptitude became clear. I would never be the heir Odin wanted. I was forgotten, left to the wayside, written out of the will. Odin began to erase my presence. I was the embarrassment. Nowadays, most people don't even know that Odin has 3 sons. But eventually, I'd like that just fine. I was meant to be the unknown man. But when I went to war, when I was spiraling, the thought that if I died, I'd finally be completely blacked out. It was a scary thought. Might have kept me alive. Suddenly, I snapped out of my funk into attention. I saw movement in front of me. It took me a moment to actually register what I was seeing. Once I did. Oh, fucking. With seemingly no prompting, a bunch of people had begun to swarm out of Nahoi's nest. Not like a couple. No, it seemed like an entire casino's worth of people were fleeing at the same time. Men, women, all rushing out in a cramped fashion. None looked particularly scared, more annoyed. Fuck. What on earth was happening? Was it possible that somehow Locke was onto me? They were using this chaos as a cover? I mean, if that's what was happening, it would be a pretty damn effective method. I quickly scanned the whole crowd. Locke, where are you? You had to be here somewhere. How could he have known an assassin was waiting for him? He didn't. Did he know? Or was this just some sort of coincidence? I couldn't tell. If it was deliberate, then it was unlikely that he solely hoped to escape just utilizing general confusion. It's possible that he was implementing some sort of disguise. I still hadn't been able to get a very clear picture of his face. I'd mostly been going off of outfit to identify him. If we took that out of the picture... No, I didn't see him carrying anything like a disguise when he entered. I don't think he could just happen to find a disguise in an underground casino. Was finding him even worth it at this point? There were so many witnesses at this point. Might even hit someone in the crossfire. No, thinking about it a bit more, I had to take the shot now. If you consider the possibility that this panic wasn't a deliberate ploy, that means Nahoi's nest had run into some trouble. They might be closed. Might be closed for some time. Leads on Locke were scanned, and if he stopped coming to his usual haunt, that'd make doing my job in a timely fashion real hard. And alternatively, if he had intentionally caused this panic to try and escape, then he probably knew someone was after him. And again, doing my job would become very hard. Witnesses would make it hard. But it was super dark out, and if there were no lights near my location, I had a silencer. This is a new track, I think. I like it. And honestly, the chaos probably worked to my advantage. I'd fire and flee. It'd probably work out. If only I could find him. Where on earth was he? Not really thinking, I backed up a bit, just trying to get a wider perspective on the scene at large. And just in the side of my vision, I saw it. From this angle, it was almost impossible to see. But I saw it. Side alley right next to Nahoi's nest, I saw a familiar-looking suit carrying a metal suitcase. Locke. What the fuck? How'd he gotten over there? I swear he hadn't come through the entrance. No, forget that. Immediately, I pulled out the sniper rifle. I aimed right at him. Shit. At the last possible moment, he walked out of my line of sight. It was too far down the alley for me to shoot at this point. Damn it, if only I had taken a step back a bit sooner. No, I couldn't start despairing now. Admitting defeat before actually being defeated was a fool's most common mistake. I knew where he was. I wasn't going to let him get away just like that. I put the sniper rifle back around my back and got to work, and climbed over the fire escape railing. Then I jumped down. After falling a little bit, I landed on the lower section of the fire escape. I repeated this process 3 times before finally falling down to the street. Unfortunately for me, I couldn't take the most direct path, because I had a fucking sniper rifle on my back. There were a ton of witnesses spread all around, and they were concentrated too close to the back alley to cut through like that. Even though it was pretty dark, I didn't want to risk anybody getting a look at my face. It's fine. I ran further to the right. I kept my movement at as brisk a jog as I could manage. The mistake would be breaking out into a pure sprint. When I last saw Locke, he was casually walking. That meant I could afford to waste a bit of time. It's more important to keep my energy. After making my way about 2 blocks from the initial incident, I turned left and made my way across the street. Even the furthest stragglers hadn't made it this far from Nahoi's nest. Given that everybody was fleeing from the scene, somebody in a hoodie and jogging shouldn't be the least of their concerns. There was an alley that cut across this block pretty close by. I ran over to it. Then I made my way through the alley. It didn't take long to emerge on the other side. Now, where was Locke? I started scanning and saw him walking down the sidewalk on the other side of the street. It was too cumbersome to take out my sniper rifle and take a shot. I was fast with it, but even for me, it would take a little bit of time to properly set it up and make a decent amount of noise. The safer play was to just default to my silenced pistol. I grabbed it from my holster, then kept jogging. It was a bit too much distance right now for my liking. I crossed the street until I was on the same sidewalk as him. Then I got a bit closer. Okay, from this distance it'd be a sure thing. 2 bullets in the back would probably do it. Ready the gun and said a silent prayer. Goodbye, Locke. Don't know how or why you almost slipped from my grasp, but you were dealing with a professional. You'd never stood a chance. And as if to punish me for this thought, it was at this moment Locke turned back to look right at me. No, chalking it up as a coincidence seemed wrong. The desperation with which he turned, the anxiousness I caught on his face, it was as though he expected to see me behind him. But how? How did he know I was approaching him from behind? I hadn't made a noise, and I had stayed out of his eye line. Did this guy have a sixth sense? His eyes registered what he was seeing, just as I made the decision to fire the shots. Unless something happened off-screen, the only thing I can think of is that Odin's message of, if you strive for power, all you will find is woe, is just sort of the tip-off. Because Odin's talk with Locke at the end of his 3rd chapter canonically happened after this Odin's conversation with Devon here. His eyes registered what he was seeing, to signify the shots. Locke was saved by a frankly astounding set of reflexes. In a life-saving second, he bounced off one leg and began to run down the alley to the right, further from Nahoi's nest. Had he been a second slower on the uptake, had he panicked or tried to call out to me, my bullets most certainly would have hit their mark. But I could now see why this guy was a gambler. Apparently, he just had a god's worth of luck on his side. He had escaped my initial volley and was now keenly aware that I was trying to kill him. It's not like I had a choice before, but now it was really dead set. This guy had to die. Fast. Immediately, I ran after him. Instead of going down the same alley, however, I kept running forwards. Thinking about this guy's trajectory, this would be a better move to cut him off. In this panicked, high-tension state, I highly doubted that he would be composed enough to notice that I wasn't directly following him. Once I got down to the next alley, further down the direction Locke was already walking, I then turned right. I hoped to already see him from my angle down the alley. Unfortunately, it was no dice. I just have kept running in the direction of the alley. Typically, this would have been a really dumb choice. Had I followed him down the alley, he would have had time to get to additional cover, and I would have easily been able to shoot him down. He probably was too dumb to think of this, however, and accidentally ended up outmaneuvering me. Whatever, I kept running down the alley. Just then I heard a voice shouting out. I don't know what you want, man. It's probably for the money, right? In this case, it's way more money than whatever your employer is paying you. I'm dropping it down in the sewer right here in this hole. Just go after that and get paid. Huh? What was he getting at? As I came out of the alley, I saw what he was talking about. I caught him right as the metal suitcase that he had been carrying up until now fell down into the sewer through an open hole. Locke was now carrying the sewer cover in one of his hands. Trying to bribe me, huh? Sorry, dirtbag, but unlike you, I wasn't motivated by the money. Cute plan, though. Locke began to run into the nearby alley, sewer grate cover still in his hand. Ready my pistol, hoping to get him in the back before he got out of my line of fire. But again, right as I prepared to shoot, he spun around 180, holding the sewer cover right by his chest with both hands. This turnaround was more explainable, though. He probably heard me. I fired a shot and ended up hitting and bouncing off the sewer cover he was holding with both hands. I couldn't tell if this was a calculated defense or a fluke accident saving his life. I would have bet on the latter. Especially considering right as the shot bounced off, Locke let out a girl's yelp. Ah! Yeah, this dude was flying by the seat of his pants. His instincts caused him to drop the grate as he ran down into the alley. Unfortunately for my angle, I couldn't get a clear shot. I wasn't going to let this fucker outrun me. I crossed across the street diagonally and quickly got to the alley he had run down. Just like a lot of the alleys in that side of town, it wasn't particularly well maintained. Graffiti and sewer drains lined the walls. I ran down it and got to the next street. But there, I completely stopped in my tracks. What? Where had he gone? Looked from my left to my right, but I couldn't see him anywhere. Based on my speed, he didn't have time to cross the road and go down another alley. What if he looped back around one of the alleys to the street I was just at? That would be clever. However, the reason I went down the alley Locke did was because the closest alley to me had a big chain fence that would be difficult to scale. And there weren't any nearby alleys on the other side. So, what the fuck? Hey, where are you? And further into the street, looking for him. Just bad at estimating speeds? That couldn't be it, could it? Fuck. Just to try and check, I ran down the street and across the alley to another street. Still couldn't find him. No, he couldn't get away like this. Wait. Idea. I ran into the street and found the closest sewer grate. Bit of difficulty, I moved it out of place and went down into the ladder. I pushed the sewer grate back into place and descended fully into the sewer. Great. As silently as I could, I moved towards where the metal case would have been dropped. Took a bit of doing, but eventually I found the spot. Awesome. Double check, I walked over and opened it. As Locke said, it looked like there was a ton of money in here. So then, this should work. I scoped out the area for a second, then found a brief dead end close by. Leaned up against the wall over there and began to stake things out. If you were to make your way to that suitcase, you'd have to move this way. And it was impossible to see me before I saw you with how I had situated myself. Thinking about it, Locke was the sort of guy who could afford to just lose such a big chunk of money. Of course, if it was to save his own skin, I had no doubt he'd give it up. If he had a chance at recovering it, he'd take it. No matter how far he was, he must have heard my shouts wondering where he was. At that point, he probably correctly assessed that I was more interested in killing him than getting the money. In that case, in his mind, the next step was clear. After getting a bit more distance on me to have properly lost me, he'd go down into the sewers and snake back around to grab what he had lost. That's what I'd be counting on. I sat silently, waiting. Soon enough, he'd come. He had to. Everything that I knew about Locke told me that he'd come back. He was greedy. He was opportunistic. He wasn't going to give up whatever he won that easily. If he saw a chance to recover it, he'd take it. Although it wasn't something he would want to part with. It certainly was not nearly as much money as he wanted to lead people to believe. But then why wasn't he coming back? So he could, in theory, just give this up. At this point, I would have heard something if coming back here was his first priority. Still, this wasn't a loss. It probably meant that, perhaps smartly, he prioritized getting to safety above all else. He was probably incredibly shaken up, hoping to get as far away from me as possible. But even still, with that in mind, that doesn't mean he could give up this amount of money. He probably suspected that I might come back to take it. However, in his mind, it had to be worth it to at least come and check to see if the money was gone. Not even going to double-check the place you had left this amount of money was insane. It was unthinkable for Locke. So eventually he'd come back over here. So I'd wait. There. I heard something. I readied myself. Somebody else was moving in the sewers. I could hear it. They were far now, but it was clear where they were moving. Come on, Locke. Get your prize. Huh? Movement stopped. What happened? Is it possible they noticed me here? No, there's no way. I was hidden so that I'd have to see you before you saw me. More to the point, the noise didn't even get remotely close before stopping. Was Locke just still running from a phantom threat and had hoped to use the sewers to throw off the trail? The noise was Locke, right? Of course it was. Who else would be going through the sewers at this time of night? Whatever. Eventually, Locke would check the case. He couldn't lose this much money without even checking on it. It was impossible for him. Who else do we know who moves through the sewers? We know Vels does. We know our fake Thane does. Hours passed. Hours more. Waited in the dark, smelly sewer. Waiting. Watching and waiting. And eventually I accepted a simple truth. Locke wasn't coming back for this money. I had failed. Kind of a shit assassin, huh? I mean, I get it. Locke's a scheming bastard, whatever. Though, really, his only point of failure was... Yeah, he's not a shit assassin. Come on now. He fell victim to a few pieces of untimely luck. It only gives you so much an excuse. This was a complete whiff of Devon's part, plain and simple. It's not even a hard job. Killing people is really easy. We're not apex predators, not remotely. We're fleshy, soft, easily poisoned, overgrown babies that are arrogant enough to assume we'll live a century or so. Don't believe me? Just try it. Grab a knife, walk into the street, and just fucking go apeshit on a passerby. Of course, it's not getting caught, that's the tricky part. Stupid governments with their stupid rules. Isn't there an amendment about this? Can you believe Big Brother over here restricting my right to murder people? What is the world coming to? We've gotten off topic. In case you haven't noticed, there's something of a common occurrence with me. Sorry. You're not sorry. Anyways, we got something to get to. The bet. We bet on whether Devon's father is alive, and as we know now, he's very much alive. At least, currently. But yeah, Devon's none other than the product of Odin Daceman's ballsack. Isn't life great? A genetic jackhammer. A product of my loins. Should I start doing a Vince McMahon impersonation every time Odin talks? It feels like that'd be fitting in this circumstance. Hey, I might make that the poll question if I remember. Hey, do you like how I pretended like this was a super unimportant bet that you had no way of knowing? You were really subtle about that, when actually it's something that is important that you did have a way of knowing. A tangential way of guessing. Unless you figured it out before now. Did you? Oh, don't answer, you just lie and say you did regardless. Whatever. You went on the easy path to the dad being alive, and what do you know, it paid out. Whoop-de-doo. Thanks for the cash. Don't let it get to your head. You'll lose it soon enough. We've been winning a lot lately with these bets. Hell yeah. Racking up the cash. Racking up the cash. Love to see it. Anyways, that ramped up my investment in Devon's story tenfold. We got this reveal, which the combination of this reveal and of the action that Devon gets himself into, I'm very interested to see where that goes. We're probably going to see this from Locke's perspective in his next chapter. So now I'm invested in that too. This is starting to get intertwined more and more. The only two outliers are these two. How do these two connect? And how do these two connect with our other stories? These remain to be seen. But it's time for us to return to Laverna. There was other mention of a case that Laverna worked on, which I want to say came up in Thane's chapter 4. The case, the murder that Laverna couldn't solve. I'm curious to see if that gets referenced in Laverna's next chapter. Or not. Well, we got a silver key to spend to unlock it. We will do that next time. Divine Deception. Yeah, that really picked up. I'm on board. I'm sold. Odin's role in all this, picking up with the reveal of a third son. Odin being the Vince McMahon of this universe. It is quite something. I'm really curious to see where Odin's story goes. Obviously, we'll get more of that with Vel's and Polydesma's attempted takeover. But next time, we'll see what Laverna gets up to. Until next time, until then, thanks for watching.